Welcome, my friends. Let's begin in the normal, comfortable seated position. Feet flat on the floor, hips just slightly above the level of the knee. Drop the weight forward in front of the sitting bones, keeping your spine long and straight, the neck released upward, the head softens upward, shoulders softening down. And as a reminder, not because you are pushing your head upward, but because you're letting go of everything that pulls your head down. Your shoulders are releasing and lengthening, not because you're pushing them down, but because you're letting go of all of the contraction that sucks them in and up. So all of this softens, all of this softens. This happens all the way through the body. The chest releases, the upper back opens, the shoulder blades release down the back. Softening your belly, your solar plexus, your lower abdomen, your lower back. Softening your hips so that your legs are just free, comfortably settled in a position that helps you feel stable, but not because you need to hold on to your legs or push with your feet, but rather because there's a natural static springiness to this part of the body that holds you up effortlessly. As long as you, of course, are settled in this appropriate location just in front of the sitting bone. Learning how to let go all the way through the body, into the ground, or into the chair at least. In the middle, your breath is free and easy, expansive. Wherever it needs to go, you're not trying to breathe. Instead, you, like with the movement, you let go of whatever's inhibiting that movement. In this case, you make space for the breath. And all of those places that the breath runs into, you don't try to force the breath through them. That adds more tension. Instead, you learn to let go of whatever it is that's inhibiting that natural free flow of breath. As you settle through your body, you release your breath. With every exhalation, you can allow your body to settle and soften further. There's no bottom to the softening progress. You can always become softer, become more free, more present. And then as you inhale, that deep sense of stillness and calmness pervades your body even further. A few more minutes, allowing yourself to settle deeply into the present moment, to become very quiet and comfortable. Settling deeper and deeper into the present moment, into softness and relaxation. As I sit here, it's very easy to be drawn into this deep space of stillness. Sometimes I have to be careful because otherwise I'll look up and it's 20 minutes later. And that's not what this class is for. But you want to allow that sense of just being settled, like you are a stone. Your awareness is a stone that's settled at the bottom of a lake. Deep and quiet, present and vivid. You're not dreaming. You're not asleep. You're simply still. And that is a quality that can be developed through this process of letting go. And whatever level that you're able to find yourself settling to, you want to maintain that through the rest of this practice if possible, which is why we start here. So if you find yourself getting pumped back up or tense or your mind is picking up speed, again, settle here or do a closing movement and just wait until that settling starts to reinstate itself, to solidify, deepen. continually soften. Soften often. And as usual, let me welcome the people who are just joining us from all over the world. If you're not certain about what we're doing, you haven't already learned this particular set, please do check down below the video for an instruction video link that will help you understand how this particular set functions and allow you to more easily follow along with our live sessions. Otherwise, it might feel a bit confusing. Always using warm hands on your body, allowing that sense of warmth to soak in around the eyes, behind the eyes, slowing your mind. If you can, allow your awareness to soak into those layers of tissue and even the thin layers of muscle behind the eyes that are constantly being used. We want to allow them to ease a little bit. Being careful to adjust the amount of pressure that you're extending into your skin. You want to sink just below the level of the skin, above the level of the bone or muscle. So not too light, but it is far easier to go too heavy than too light here. Move in a way that encourages circulation of the fluids beneath the skin, and allow your awareness to soak into that layer. If your mind wanders away, soften the distraction, which is a kind of tension in the mind, and simply relax back into the present moment, into what's happening. If you carefully cultivate a form of interest, a keen interest in what's happening inside the body as you do this, then you don't have to convince your mind to stay. You just watch. Fascinated but quiet as changes happen inside. That's another way to trick the mind into being present. Eventually, you don't need that. Interest by itself is a thing that's not required. But in the beginning, it's very useful. Remember that it can be useful to soften open your jaw as you release these areas. It's a beautiful, warm, sunny day here. Got to spend some of the morning lying in the sun like a cat. It's very nice. It's been very cloudy and rainy up here in Washington. It's not Scotland, but it's definitely the Scotland of the States. Nice to see you, Mr. Dill. Welcome. I thought that I'd mention one quality of training that we cultivate from two different directions. So we can continue opening down the arms while I talk, softening open, letting your awareness soak in. If I'm distracting you, then just turn the sound off. That one of the ways that we cultivate, in a sense, is from the outside in. We release the surface of the body. We start by softening our hands. We try to let that softness begin to communicate with the superficial tissues of the body. Slowly, the muscles learn to soften. We do movements that help disentangle the body. We follow our breath in order to help quiet the mind. These are qualities of practice that are very useful. They start simple, and they slowly help to change us as people. So in the beginning, we are just working on acquiring the ability to let go, and we slowly massage acupressure points, or we release the fascia, or we slow our mind down for periods of meditation. And over time, that changes who we are. That transforms us at a deeper level. And so in a way that we are working from the outside in, making larger, deeper personal transformations, becoming better people, in a sense, by doing these simple local practices. So for instance, I could learn how to be an honest person by practicing honesty. There are so many people that have difficulty with chronic lying or twisting the truth or these kinds of things, half-truths. We see them all the time, especially on TV. And those people, if they came and they were wanting to learn how to be more honest, because it's a very important thing that a lot of people do want to develop, they could simply practice being honest for a period of time. They could tell the truth. Maybe if there were some difficult truths that they were avoiding, they would practice once a day telling those difficult truths to people that they're nervous about, clearing the air. Because so often untruths build up in those difficult or awkward corners of a relationship, for instance. And these are things that are common in 12-step programs and in if you're working with a counselor and trying to heal certain aspects of your personality, they may help you along these lines. Maybe you just journal, and during the journaling, you tell the truth. And that teaches you about how good it feels to be honest, to be yourself, to be clear, these kinds of qualities. Maybe you also expose yourself to the damage that happens when you or somebody else tells a lie, even a fib, a small lie. Fib is a really good word. And this is a way of working from the outside in. We slowly become more honest people because we practice honesty. We practice understanding and gaining insight into the deeper problems with not telling the truth, for instance. And all of these methods, sometimes they're called post-heaven methods. Sometimes they're referenced in this dichotomy of Xing and Ming training. Ming being this one aspect of our physical nature. And these are ways that we learn how to be ourselves, even just by practicing being present, not being distracted, not giving energy to the distracting tense mind, constantly softening ourselves as we process and explore our body, this kind of thing can be making us better people as well. We learn how to be in the world in a different way. We develop new habit patterns. We explore new levels of possibility with peace and centeredness. And this is one way to practice. And I feel like that's one very useful thing to recognize, that you can build health and build and transform yourself as a person through these very simple, accessible methods. Anybody can do them. Anyone can think of an exercise for themselves that they do every day. If you want to become somebody who is kinder, you can practice kindness once a day, if that's a difficult thing for you. For some people, generosity is a really big thing. They find themselves unable to part with anything that they think of as theirs because of a deeper fear or, who knows, trauma in their past. This is actually a woman that I was reading about. One of her practices is that fairly regularly, on some schedule she keeps for herself, she gives away something that she considers important to her. And over the years, that has allowed her to build up the capacity to just become free of needing to have things, needing to claim, needing to be selfish. That's a practice that I don't necessarily recommend. This person is a nun, but it's something that was very nurturing and helpful for her. And these are considered these methods that heal from the outside in. And they can be very effective. And they're often much easier to access. And they can build up. You can spend the whole day doing these things. You can do service programs. Go join some place, and once a week you help out with the poor or the needy, or you work in a hospital being kind and friendly to people, or you go work at a charity someplace. Cultivate these skills by being part of it. And it can be genuinely transformative at the deeper levels of your personhood. And that's why in many Buddhist centers, for instance, they call it sila. That's one very important pathway toward healing in Buddhism and even in Taoism, and always very worth exploring. On the other hand, we have a different method. We have this method that works from, instead of the outside in, you work from the inside out. And that can be more difficult to describe, which is why it's often less accessible to people. But you're cultivating deeper aspects of your nature that are always there, but they are covered up. So for instance, with the honesty quality, people that lie, instead of slowly learning how to be honest, learning how to speak your truth, learning why it can be destructive and actually not enjoyable to give false impressions in the world. But instead, what you can do is go to that aspect of your nature, and you do have one, that has no use for lying. That by its nature, it's perfectly honest and clear and free and true to itself. Maybe even just as we practice this, you can tune into that quality. And you could actively practice allowing that aspect of your nature to come to the front. That aspect of your nature that is always honest. It wouldn't understand lying. It has no sense of being dishonest or any reason to be dishonest. In fact, the reasons to be dishonest seem silly or petty or destructive or violent in some way, and you would never want that. And so one whole way of practicing is, rather than going out and developing honesty, it is instead to work from the inside out, to allow your awareness to settle into that aspect of your nature that by its inherent nature is always honest. and allow that to guide your speech, for instance, or whatever, maybe your fingers if you're typing lies online. And that slowly transforms your life, because over time, that quality becomes more your lived expression. It becomes more a way that you are all the time. And so you become that honest person that's always lived inside you, from the inside out. Sometimes people refer to this as a pre-heaven practice, sync practice. It just depends on the perspective and who's using the term in what way. It's difficult to pin down these terms, but I know that there are some questions about this terminology, so I thought I would offer some ways to think about it. So if you are learning how to quiet your mind, for instance, you can practice being quiet. You can follow your breath, constantly releasing distractions, falling back to the present moment. Over and over again, slowly your mind learns how to do that more easily. You can do what I actually spent a portion of my life doing, putting index cards everywhere. I used to constantly, well, now I have ink marks on my hands from doing calligraphy, but I used to put marks on my hands or my body, words or notations, to remind me to be present or to cultivate a certain quality. I would have alarms set that would, throughout the day, remind me to, oh yeah, come back to whatever it was that I was actually working on cultivating. Often something like presence, or settling my mind, or letting go of anger, which was a big part of my life, or fear. And so the alarm would go off, and I would do a kind of closing, coming back to myself, releasing whatever emotional torrent was going through me at the time. No matter how I felt, I agreed with myself that the alarm goes off, or you see this mark on your hand, or the Post-it note on the refrigerator, and you make the change that you promised you'd make. And over time, that can work its way from the outside in. But there is also a quality of your mind which is always still and present. It is always and ever quiet and peaceful and kind. And this aspect of your nature, depending on how you've already cultivated, you may be able to tune into that quality at any time. If you can, that is a really powerful tool that you have. And you don't have to try to settle your mind. You allow your mind to embody that quality, which is always settled. It's already part of your nature. And again, this may seem foreign or strange to some people listening, but I thought it was an important quality to talk about. And so in a way, from the inside out, your mind starts to change. It becomes more naturally all the time settled and still, because you're constantly living as that quality of your mind. With your body, for instance, we can practice softening and softening and softening, and softness accumulates. And slowly the body learns and the nervous system slows down. And you learn how to become here and present and relaxed. There is also a quality of your physical experience that is always settled and peaceful. And if you can tune into that and discover that quality, that allows this quality to slowly infuse itself in your body. There's an aspect of your nature that is always content, at rest, at peace, in the way that silence is always below and behind the noise. The silence didn't go anywhere, it's just covered up. So you can either work on lowering the level of noise to help you more easily uncover the silence. That's working from the outside in. It's also possible for you to tune into the silence that's actually beneath the noise. And so that becomes part of your lived experience all the time, from the inside out. And the difficulty with these two methods is that, at least within the system of training that I'm part of, you want to cultivate them both at the same time. Xing, Ming, Shuang Xiu. You cultivate Xing and Ming at the same time, inside and the outside, from the outside in and from the inside out at the same time. And so you have to uncover both of these skills. The deeper skills that are always quiet and present and there. You're uncovering what's already there. And the other skills that you have to acquire and develop the way we are doing now. And it's a very difficult thing to teach, to talk about these deeper, quiet qualities that are always present. But once you start to find them, and you can find them whenever you look, that's a very potent way to practice. And so in the first half of this practice series, we emphasize cultivating skills of softening from the outside in. We allow our mind to soak in to the skin, below the skin. We learn how to touch and communicate and find the points. And in the second half, we want to start to cultivate this capacity to notice the things that were already there. In a way, this is one way of talking about the primary channels versus the 8 extraordinary vessels. The things that are being moved and created as we go, and the qualities that were always and already there. Both are important to begin to find, and I'll start giving pointers toward the internal to the external methods. And there's no hurry in finding them. And as you start to uncover them within yourself, we want to find a way to combine the practices at the same time. The more still and quiet you become, inside and outside, the easier it is to actually sense these deeper qualities that are always there. Because again, like the stillness beneath the noise, it's just a lot easier to notice the subtle, permanent things because it's so easy to be distracted by the noise. And so if you find yourself very noisy, then please do find ways to become less noisy, less chaotic, at least during this practice. You go back to your chaos afterward.
If you ever have the chance, it's worth doing research on the Buddhist Eightfold Path. And the instructions go quite deep, but one of the very useful ways to learn about it is that the Buddha is trying to offer suggestions about ways to make it easier to be yourself, which is all it means to be Buddha, to be your most true self. And one of them, for instance, is right livelihood, which is the job that you work. And it's possible to have a job where you are forced to do things that shatter your precepts or your promises to yourself, that tear a hole in your conscience, or give you so much trauma, for instance, and you can imagine these kinds of jobs, that it makes it very difficult for you to rest quietly in yourself, because you end up layered with guilt and shame, and you have to deal with an angry population, or you destroy your family, or you develop bad habits, these kinds of things, or they just destroy your health. There are certainly lots of jobs like that. And so part of healing is because part of human life is work, that we have to find a job that brings out our best qualities, and that becomes part of your practice. That even while you're working, which is a very human thing to have to do, work is good for us, but we do work that is nurturing to these qualities that we want to bring. And I won't tell you which qualities you want. You decide what you want. And you find a job that makes it easy for you to constantly explore and bring those out. I used to have great difficulty speaking to people. And so I purposely went and got a job working at a cash register. And my whole internal reason for being there was to cultivate the ability to be present and kind, and to work on clear speaking and these difficulties that I had with at the time. Speech for me was very difficult. I had a bad stutter and a lot of cognitive inhibition, and my English honestly was not that great. And my ability to communicate kindly had been hampered by growing up in a family and in a community that was very negative. And so I had to purge a lot of those habits and discover better ways to speak and to connect with people. And that job was one of the best practices that I'd ever gotten involved in to help me heal that, especially irritated customers. Great practice. And because of that, I developed skills that have nourished and enhanced the rest of my life. The money that I gained and the lifestyle that I had at that time, like with all money and lifestyle, they're just gone. They're forgotten. But the qualities that are developed from that job last. And this is a kind of outside-in practice, to use this language. And so your job is your monetary monastery. Just making up terms. Sure, it's providing you with food and everything else, but that's the same thing that happens at a monastery. The main thing you're doing is practicing. What are you practicing? You decide what you want to cultivate, and you cultivate that.
And if you have people trying to get you to cultivate something that's wrong from your perspective, just tell them no or find a different job. But you would be surprised at how you can be a good influence on people, because they also probably want to cultivate these things. And you can be that example for them of what we call an upright way of living, a more correct way of living, being kind, being gentle, being honest. These things we all have to agree are better. Being direct, being yourself, doing your best, whatever these qualities are. These are things that our world needs. And when you're around people who are drawing you down bad pathways of habit, we all know how easy that is to slip down. And so you either find people that lift you up, or you be the one that lifts them up. It depends on where you are in your life and what you need. But do remember that wonderful little statement. I don't know how true it is, but it feels true. That we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So please be careful about who you choose for your sangha, for your cultivation circle. And that includes a job, and your friends, and your family, and what you do in your spare time. It's all monastic life. Just some of it is in the forest or in the pub. It's all the same. You cultivate. You choose what you want. Make it work. So you choosing to work at a place where people are honest and kind, and the people you're working with lift you up, or the people you hang out with are lifting you up. They're better people than you, and you become better by association. That's a kind of outside in practice. Very worthwhile. The inside out practice would be, that is not inside out, but practicing from the inside toward the outside, is you staying at a place so you can lift other people up, because you are resting in that place within yourself that wants to be honest, that wants to be kind, that wants to be direct, that wants to cultivate the qualities of presence that you know are important for you. That aspect of you that already knows that and wants to cultivate it in your life, that's from the inside out. And of course, it's easiest if you're doing both at the same time. Surround yourself by people who are wonderful, and then constantly be part of that wonderfulness. But sometimes we have to work with what we have to work with. And best is always both. constantly returning. And as a reminder, in case you are just joining us and you're not quite sure what we're doing, there is a link down below to an introductory lesson that explains these points, these practices, the style of touch, what we're trying to do with this practice. Feel free to check that out and join us anytime for the live session. We have a little less than 50 more days, which is pretty wonderful, before we start the next class. Remember to keep your hands very soft. Hopefully that by this point in the practice, your hands are feeling softer all the time. After a solid hour of continually letting go of your hands get better and better at being soft. Eventually, as you practice, you want your whole body to be this soft. But very commonly, when people are practicing Qigong or Tai Chi practices or meditation, it's very interesting that their whole body might be soft, but their hands will be tight, or their face will be screwed up in tension, because maybe their bodies are softer than their minds, and their minds are activating their hands and their face. But you can ask yourself from your own experience, if I have a hose that has water running through it, which part of the hose can I kink and block that still allows water through? And recognize that not only is our whole body one continuous expression of qi, but as is our mind. our breath, qualities of our emotions. We're one continuous flow. Blocking anywhere blocks everywhere. Of course, unblocking anywhere also impacts the flow everywhere. And so even if you soften your hands, that begins to help teach your body-mind how to soften, which is a wonderful gift. That we can start simple and small and slowly learn these lessons and let them apply to the more difficult areas of our lives. But we do want to recognize that everything is connected. We don't want to leave anything out on the inside or the outside. Because some people asked for it, depending on how much time that I have today, I will probably post on the Patreon page under the heading of Qigong Self-Massage maybe a PDF or some sort of text document that has all of these steps written out, the points they associate with and such. It's not a difficult process, but it's such a long form that it will take me a long time. And so whether or not I finish it today, at some point soon, I will be posting that text document. And so if you'd like that, then of course, check that Patreon page. Ooh, I found a sore or reactive spot. Interesting. I don't know why it's there. Wasn't there yesterday. But again, I mention this because we want to always be listening for these changes that appear in our body and then do what's required to help them release before they turn into actual problems, or in the very least to increase our self-awareness of our body. So I'm going to spend an extra moment here just relieving and easing that space. Yeah, it's already going away. Who knows? But you want to have that quality of curiosity, paying attention, being open to see what's there. And whenever you find spaces in your body that are either particularly difficult for you to notice or feel, spend extra time there. And similarly, like this spot was for me, if it suddenly becomes tender or somehow feels especially vulnerable, then spend time being gentle and present, nourishing that space. Sometimes it may take weeks or months to do it, but of course it's worth the time. Until your body becomes fuller, more stable, more healthy and vibrant. Remember that you can do this at any age. At some ages, it takes longer because our bodies get more cemented over time, or perhaps we have less chi, or maybe just less time. So you do your best, because the option is not doing anything. Being comfortable and present in your body as usual. Practice being kind. Practice being friendly. Learning to do it here is the same as learning to do it on anybody else in your life. I would say it's even more effective because you're feeding it into yourself at several different levels. Especially if you can generate that feeling from the inside, that place in you that is always kind and friendly. Uncovering that, letting that be expressed in your life. Maybe you can just tell that at a deep level, you are just as a person, friendly, peaceful, kind, gentle, loving. Maybe sometimes that gets lost when you get upset or you've had a bad day, but you know that that's not really you. So you uncover that place and just let yourself be that version of you for a little while. So that way you would be able to cultivate that inside to the outside quality, that pre-heaven method. Being your real self. And at the same time, you would be teaching your body and your nervous system through good habit patterns that it's possible to be gentle and kind, for it to feel nice. And you're just cultivating both at the same time. And the shapes in your nervous system and in your brain change shape, transform to become something different. And at the end of that 100 days, you are a different kind of person. You make your movements as large or as small as you'd like. If you're lucky enough as a person to know who you are, to know that maybe you feel chaotic or stressed or angry or however you feel, but you know that's not really you. You know that as a person you prefer to be kind or present rather than distracted or upset, that you're just agitated or you have bad habits or you're overwhelmed and suddenly you hear yourself speaking in the voice of your most destructive parent or something like that. This is an experience I've had. That's just a matter of habit. That's just something to train out of your system. That's easy enough to do. Like learning how to play the piano or tie your shoes differently. It just takes practice. But if you're lucky enough to know those qualities that you have, that deep inside you are honest and kind and friendly and all of the good qualities that you know for yourself, that you want for yourself, that are there, the inside to the outside method would be you simply resting in that quality of yourself. That's bigger, in a way, older than your current personality or your habits or your job or the people that you're around. It's a deeper, truer part of your nature. And you allow that to lead the way. It may still take time to break habits, but that doesn't make that part of you less real or less true. It just has to work its way into your human life. Lying can be a habit. You just break the habit, like anything else. Being generous can be a habit. You just generate the habit, like anything else. Choose how you want to be. Construct your world to make it easier. Find community and friends that make it easier. And then a day at a time, just like we're doing here, we cultivate this new person, your truer self. You may find it helpful when you're sitting, usually for people that have more glute material to sit on than I do. But for those of you that have a rear end, so to speak, then it can be helpful to actually grab the fleshy part of that area and pull it out a bit to expose the sitting bones a bit more easily. And that helps to support the space behind you more than it does. It's not really a thing I have to do, but I know that for some people it's very helpful. So I thought I'd mention it. Being still and present. Remember that as we click our teeth and move our tongue, again, I want to remind people, because I was hearing about it, that if this makes you tired, please stop before it makes you tired. You don't have to do as many repetitions of everything that I'm doing as I'm doing. I'm slowly increasing the repetitions of things as our skill levels progress, but everybody progresses at a different rate, and every day will be different. We're not trying to tire ourselves out. We're trying to slowly expand the comfortable range, the green zone, as we say, rather than pushing into the red zone. Stay comfortable and long. If when you're circling your tongue, you find that you're getting exhausted, either take a break, that's fine, or see if you can do the exact same movement, but with half the effort. Usually people are clenching for some reason, they don't have to. So use that as a way to practice unclenching. That's part of the practice too. And then similarly, as you swallow down the saliva, you can swallow that down 3 times. And let the movement of the saliva carry your mind down as though it sinks down behind the navel. And if that's difficult for you, and you just feel your chi coming up all the time, as I know that happens to some people, you can just do a kind of closing, pull your hands down your body, let your hands rest on your navel to make it easier for your awareness to go down. And over time, things sink more easily. The more you clench, the more you try, the more chi comes up. So try to relax. Just another minute, settling your awareness into that space, at least into your navel. If you can, feel the space behind your navel. If you have trouble feeling your navel at all, you can poke your fingers into that point until it draws your mind there. If you can feel behind your navel, perhaps you can feel a little bit further inside than that. Maybe you feel the inside of your abdominal wall. And eventually you can drop even further back toward your spine than that. When you feel ready, feel free and lie flat if you'd like. Remember that it can be helpful to place a blanket or a towel beneath your legs or your lower back if your lower back tends to arch a lot. Perhaps you want something beneath your head or your elbows. Laying down in this case should be very comfortable. Situate yourself in a way that allows you to release to the floor or to the bed or the table, wherever you're laying down. And as you settle your body, let your mind become quiet and soak into your physical body. If you can, feeling your whole body at once. Not squeezing your mind, just allowing your mind to be present. After this whole practice, your awareness should be saturated into your body. Simply notice that saturation. And at some point, when you feel ready, you can roll onto your side and into a seated posture. Sitting in any way that feels comfortable to you. Just be comfortable. Be relaxed. Let your awareness soak through your body, feeling anchored in your dantian, and then slowly expand through the surface of your body into the space around you. Like turning a lamp up slowly until the space around you is clear and vivid, and your awareness is still rooted and anchored in the center of your body. Thank you, my friends. I appreciate you joining. I have time to answer some questions if you'd like. I'll read some of Dell's questions. But if anybody else has questions, do feel free to ask. I know it can be intimidating when there's a lot of chatter going on. But if somebody hanging out in the back has something they'd like to ask, feel free to do so. And I can just wait a few minutes. Dell asks, basically, what is regulating the mind? And regulating the mind, again, it's a general term. It depends who's using it. These words are so flexible. Usually it just refers to coming to see clearly how your mind is either jumping around like a monkey or running forward obsessively like a horse, and learning to find ways to have it be present, to be in a more healthful way. And different systems have different ways of regulating. Some use control. That's how I grew up with, in a particular Zen tradition, where you're just supposed to be like an iron cage for your mind. I don't find that particularly helpful. And within this system, it's simply recognizing the distractiveness as either a deep qi deficiency or unrootedness in your body, or a qi rushing upward problem, in which case we still settle and sink the qi, or it's a kind of tension in the mind. And so the mind is constantly grabbing your attention and moving it around. And so all of these have the same way of healing, this sort of softening and centering into the body. These are various afflictions of the mind. Of course, there's more serious imbalances in the mind. Some people have it much more difficult than others. For some people, it's quite easy to settle the mind. Those people often don't end up in meditation classes because it's pretty easy for them to feel centered and present. They think the rest of us are crazy. And perhaps we are. But for most of us, it takes a lot of work to teach the mind a different way of being. And then for some people, it's really, really difficult. And so just anywhere in there along that spectrum that you are on, learning to regulate your mind as one of the most important aspects of your life is a very big deal. And so you use the methods that work. I'm glad you're sitting more comfortably. The other question that was asked yesterday that I didn't get the chance to answer is about these old phrases like chopping wood and carrying water, or when you first see the mountain before practice, you look at the mountain is a mountain. During practice, you look at the mountain is no longer a mountain. After practice, after awakening, the mountain is returned to being a mountain again. And all of these are referencing different ways of experiencing practice in real life. They're usually teachers or masters talking about the experience after awakening has occurred. And for instance, many people who are first learning about these ideas of enlightenment or awakening, or whatever terminology people choose to throw around about it, the beloved, there's these ideas that you become magical or you stop having to deal with real life for some reason. But the deep truth is that you become much more human. You become more yourself, at least if you're cultivating in a way that I think is healthy. And so you still do the laundry. You still make your bed if you make your bed. You still take the trash out. You still drive your car and get stuck in traffic. All these things still happen. I still get sunburned if I sit in the sun too long. Every person is like that. And the more yourself you become, you just become more able to feel those things. And so often, actually, when people are first cultivating, everything gets more painful. Not to scare people away, but you can no longer hide from your own problems. And so we were talking about lying earlier, that in the very beginning, as you practice, lying is easy for people. It doesn't mean anything. They never think about it. They lie all the time. They don't even notice it. It just becomes part of how they speak. Their friends notice it. They don't expect them to be honest. Your whole world becomes saturated with this dishonesty. It's a very unhealthy way to live, but you don't notice it. It's just how things are. You look at TV, everybody's doing that. That's just what life is like. And then as you start to practice and you cultivate and you find those parts of you that are lying based on insecurity or neediness or grasping or the desire to manipulate people or all those creepy parts of your nature, you start to feel them. And whenever you're doing something that is nourishing those creepy parts of you, you feel creepy, you feel terrible. And so for a while, just regular life feels terrible because you have to start changing, but it takes time to change. And so eventually you just become a person that doesn't lie anymore, and then you're fine. But there's a whole period in there where you can no longer hide from yourself. It's the same thing as we put our awareness in our body. It can be really uncomfortable for people who have been not paying attention to their body for decades. So they suddenly start feeling into their body and they're, oh my gosh, it's really uncomfortable in here. You feel an old injury or an old trauma, and it sucks being inside their own body. And so they find it difficult to do a practice where they're saturating their awareness into their body again. Becoming embodied is uncomfortable for a lot of people until, again, they're comfortable again. And now it's pleasant to be in the body. But there's a process there you have to go through. And this is a thing that is not often talked about in spiritual circles, because in the spiritual marketplace, and it's creepy that there is such a thing, that's not a very good sales point. So all people sell is, bliss. Look at this person. You see that they're happy all the time. They're contented. Oh, look how healthy they've become. That's the selling point. That's the thing you see on the poster. You don't see a person vomiting onto the ground and hanging to their head and having to quit their job because their job is bad for them, or ending that toxic relationship, or those things that are really painful. They have to take out the trash. They have to get in there and clean under their bed. And oh my gosh, there's scorpions in there. And that's just what the process looks like. It's not necessarily clean, but that's one good reason to have a Sangha or a good teacher to keep supporting you, to be, in the very least, saying, hey, keep going. So if I can tell you to do it, if it starts getting hard, let me be a person, one voice to tell you, keep going. Because the world will fall apart around you. You will fall apart inside as you reshape yourself. And that's that very famous term. It's the old alchemical term in Latin, salve et coagula, which is like the idea of you go into a solution and then you change, you come back together. Like the caterpillar turning into the butterfly, that cocoon, that metamorphosis, that process is basically the caterpillar goes into its wrapping paper and it turns into a liquid, more or less. It turns into this fun gelatin thing, and then it reshapes itself into a butterfly. It has to completely turn into something else and then reform. And that process of falling apart is a very important aspect of healing. Spiritual healing, physical healing, it's all the same process. And so letting that process happen to you, to go through an actual metamorphosis process, that's what it looks like. You can't just add on to your old problems. That doesn't work. You can't add honesty onto a life of lies. That life of lies has to be taken to pieces, and then something else is built. It doesn't necessarily mean you destroy your life. Ideally, you do it wisely and carefully. You maintain your relationships. You heal them instead of throw them away. You heal your workplace instead of quitting if you like your job. This kind of thing. I did it wrong. I threw away everything. I destroyed my life at the time. And then fortunately, I had people in my life to sort of feed me and keep me alive until I healed again. But I'm lucky like that. And not everybody's that lucky. And so a lot of people that go through this awakening process, they destroy their families during that process because they don't understand that it's possible to heal, not just break things down. And so please do be careful as you go through the process. But the point of, for instance, the chopping wood and carrying water is through that whole process, you're still feeding yourself. You still have to be alive. You still have to take a bath. You still have to take care of your life. If you have parents that you love, you call your parents. You just do it. And if part of that experience is you look at the world around you, I look at the mountain, and before I practice, all I see is, oh, I like the mountain, I don't like the mountain. Oh, that mountain's name is such and such. Its ancestral name is this, and it has this terrible history. It has this amazing history. Or over there, that's where the mountain spirits live. Something like that. The mountain itself is made up of my ideas about the mountain. Oh, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt.
Mel made a drive-by. And eventually you start to understand that, no, the mountain exists on its own. I have all these ideas about the mountain, and you realize that all you're seeing when you look at the mountain are your ideas about the mountain. In some spiritual circles, we talk about it like there's a shadow world on top of everything, like a ghost. And that's all I'm experiencing. It's made up entirely of my ideas about something. So I look at this beautiful mountain over there, but all I'm seeing are my thoughts about it, my memories about it, my hopes for it, what I dislike. And that makes up 99% of most people's lives. It's amazing. Of course, people's lives are chaotic. And then they're not dealing with anything that's actually real. And so you start to realize that. And everywhere you look, all you see is this shadow world, this illusion that you've created. And you're like, the world is illusion. The world is a dream. And you're looking around and all you see are your thoughts. But still under there is a real world. And so eventually you get free of all of this mess, these cobwebs of thought that you cover everything with. And then suddenly, oh, there's the mountain. There's my life. And you've uncovered it. And so things return to what they always were. The mountain was always there. It didn't actually change. I changed. So I was better able to see it. And we are doing that with everything, with our bodies, with our lives, with the environment. We become ourselves that we always were. We just didn't know. And that's the big joke of it all. And so I hope that answers that question. Yeah, Mel came and left. Big work day for Mel. So I'll go down there and make her some lunch. Thank you, my friends. Enjoy your practice.